All right, good morning, everyone. We have a great group today. We got Harrison, Trade Better 99, and Aaron Amin from Remote Real Estate Academy. So, morning, fellas.
Good
Good
morning.
morning.
So, we are hoping maybe Ned still pops in, but I'm not sure where he is. But hold on, I'm just gonna wait to go live here on Instagram. There we go. All right. So I think this is a great group because I'm in Hawaii. I invest remotely in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Aaron does all kinds of stuff, and that's what his school or his Mighty Academy is about: real estate, remote real estate investing. And Harrison's in Virginia, also investing remotely. So I think the biggest question we always get is self-managing or getting a property manager. So Aaron, maybe you can kind of start us off with your thoughts on this.
Yeah, so I don't want to go too deep because maybe we go around the horn a little bit and get our overall take on it, and then we can dig into some of the stories. But essentially, this is one of the first kind of fork in the road decisions that someone has to make when they actually buy a property, whether it's in their backyard or across the country. You still have to make that decision at some point. For someone like me, like I barely want to hang up pictures in my house. Um, so I know for a fact that I'm not handy, and even if a property was on my street, I probably wouldn't be managing it. But with that said, self-managing means something different to different people. Some people think that that means that you're the one swinging the hammer and doing all the repairs and everything. And I have kind of a different definition of self-management, right? To me, it just means that you're circumventing hiring a third party property manager, and you're going to handle all the administration, tenant relations, and all that type of stuff yourself. So with that kind of definition in mind, my wife and I, we own 8 rentals across 3 states, the closest of which is 1,000 miles away. And this conversation is very timely for us because up until about 4 months ago, we were self-managing 6 out of the 8, and we've had most of them for almost 5 years now. 5 years or over. So kind of as we go throughout this discussion, I'll explain what made us shift from self-managing for almost 5 years to actually bringing on property managers in those markets. But in short, I do believe that the skill of self-management and learning how to do that, whether it's right in your backyard or afar, is something that every investor should at least learn about, whether or not they choose to do it or not. So that's kind of my short take. Would love to hear what you guys think.
Yeah, I agree with you there. That I viewed self management more as the almost the project manager or the general contractor for everything. And when I bought my first property, I went in with the idea of self management and everything. I got the right in control. I got the right people, and I have no problems talking with tenants. So I was like, oh, easy, no problem. But for me, where I went to the property management route was the 2 a.m., 4 a.m. calls where the heating's out, and then calling the company saying, hey, this is out, and getting a lot of grumbling and everything. I was like, okay, this is where it went into. And then also, I'm really good, meticulous about finances and everything, making sure it's all there. But then having a group right there also for collections and everything, that really helps a lot. So that's how I went.
Cool. Yeah, I think hold on, sorry. I just wanted to also say what's up to Frank, old guy Ari. I know he has a couple of choices right now. There's a bunch of opportunities to be watching right now. There's the school community, out of state investing, and there's also I know Zuber was just talking, but thanks for stopping by. And I just want to remind everyone, Frank is trying to raise money to donate to the Blind Center. So here is the shirt that he is selling. So I'll put the PayPal link down there. But this is the front of the shirt, the ORAT shirt, and the back. It says, I found my tribe. So go check it out, and let's help for it's a good cause, and we can donate to the Blind Center. All right. So yeah, I think that's one of the biggest questions I always get is whether some people look at it because we all follow Zuber and we also all listen to Lumberjack. And he always talks about how your property manager is making a lot more money or making more money than you are in a sense. I think that always gets a lot of people thinking about whether they should self-manage or hire a property manager. And I think my quick and easy take on it is I wouldn't self manage from a distance initially. That would be my short answer to it. So right now I'm kind of hybriding things. I'm doing a little bit of both. I do have a property manager and I do kind of self manage. But I also think Aaron has a great, mighty community that is kind of focused on this. And I have a lot of people like BuzzTune, Mikey, that are have questions, I think, about what can they expect from this academy, and what kind of resources can they get from there.
Yeah, you want me to just give you kind of a rundown of what's in there?
Of course.
Sure. So yeah, it's called the Remote Real Estate Academy. I have a one partner. His name's Nathan Murith. He's a fellow one rental at a time tribe member, and he and I have pretty similar stories. So we both have young kids. We work full time, and we invest out of state. So he has about a dozen properties in across St. Louis and Indiana, and then my wife and I own 8 across Iowa, Washington, and Nevada. And so for both of us, we're minimum 1,000 miles away from our closest rental. And we're running and growing these portfolios while we're working full time with our families. So we kind of reverse engineered, what had worked for us as far as building teams and systems for out of state investing, but also doing it in such a way that it fits into our lives. We kind of our program that we built out is called the 20-minute investor, and so the idea is that we only have 20 to 30 minutes a day to really actually work on this business. So instead of kind of letting time expand and just taking on task after task, we kind of challenge ourselves and worked backwards into a system that fits into that time slot. So it's a combination of teaching you all the fundamentals. We have a course that goes from kind of zero knowledge all the way to your first rental. So everything you need to know, picking a market, building a team, building your buy box, how to analyze deals, how to get inbound lead flow, how to set up systems and operations at your rental before you close, so that you have, again, you try and avoid those 2 a.m. toilet calls, the infamous 2 a.m. toilet call. But
Yeah.
but yeah, so it's all the fundamentals of investing, but with that kind of lens of time management and how to fit it into the lifestyle that you want to live for yourself and your family too. There is a community. We have about 60 total members right now, and it's growing. We bring on usually about a handful of people every month. We're not trying to turn it into a thing with 10,000 people in it. We actually appreciate the intimacy because we want people in there that are actively working towards their next deal, and they leverage Nathan, myself, and the other community members for peer support, coaching, and just making our goal is to make sure nobody's ever stuck. So anytime somebody hits a bottleneck or a point of friction or a moment of self-doubt, we want people to lean into the community and the coaching to get past that. So that's kind of in a nutshell. And then we do also do some market spotlights. So usually once a month, we'll find a team member or an agent or a property manager in different markets across the country, and they'll come kind of make the case for why you should invest in that market. So we did one recently. We had an agent based in Ohio. He showed us all the Ohio markets. We did another one last month with Chattanooga, Tennessee, which is another kind of emerging hotspot. And so we do try and also kind of bring those to the front of, for the people that are following us, getting exposed to these different markets and kind of plugging and playing directly with the existing team. That's us in a nutshell.
Yeah, I love that. It looks like we got some of the members here. We got Kyle, blue collar landlord, giving a shout out to the academy, and I know Frank is also part of that. But yeah, and I actually met Nathan. Aaron wasn't there at the event last year, but I met Nathan in person at the ORAD event last year. So hopefully both of you will be there this coming year. But yeah, for you, Harrison, I guess, was that always your thought initially? Were you just gonna always get a property manager from the get go?
No, yeah, and I'm actually also in Aaron's academy too. I highly recommend it. He's
Appreciate
like the point where I'm at right now is because I'm trying to think about maybe new ways of investing because right now my way is not there. But yeah, getting back to your question, Mark, I actually thought I was going to be self-managing the whole time. It was just one of those where I think with this being my first rental, I went in a little too gung ho, but it's been able to pull back a little bit. And thankfully, my property manager, they're actually teaching me on what they do. And so they're saying, this is how we're doing it. This is why we're doing it. And I think for me, it's getting, because I also have inherited tenants, I really didn't know how to really work with them in the beginning. I was very empathetic, very willing to work with them, but also being able to provide that, firm, like, no means no in this situation. So yeah, and doing that multiple times, I think that gets a little tiring. And so having the property manager for right now really helps. And that's my goal anyway for um like maybe the next property I'm going to self-manage, or if I bought one in Virginia, I'm definitely self-managing because I like fixing stuff up. That's actually not too bad for me, but it's just more of the rent collections. That's where I need to really build my strength on.
Yeah, I think for me, the biggest thing I have is you really have to know yourself though. There to me, there's just some people, no matter how much it may make financial sense or it makes sense to self-manage, a lot of people I think just don't have the maybe demeanor or I guess maybe mindset to self-manage. And especially if you have a super busy W-2, right? You don't want to be dealing with a lot of those things. And I think ultimately that's the goal for a lot of people though, because like you look at like we said, we all follow kind of the same community, like Zuber, Dion, Lumberjack. They all have a different perspective on it, right? Like Zuber has a property manager. He doesn't want to deal with it, right? He doesn't want to deal with any of these things. And I'm sure Dion and Lumberjack are always trying to tell him, man, you know how much money you'd save if you just self-manage on your own. So I think a lot of it too is what other goals you have in mind. But I think the biggest thing, and I think Aaron, you can touch on this too, is I think you just learn a lot though by self-managing, and that's part of the importance of it.
100%. Yeah, I think there's a few different kind of ways to slice it, but I said earlier, like the skill of self-managing, I think is something everyone should have. And what that means that you don't necessarily have to actually manage your property, but you need to learn about all the different components of what it means to manage a property. So tenant screening, how to actually like set expectations properly. You want to understand your lease, even if a property manager is the one providing it to you. You want to make sure you understand your landlord tenant laws and the at least the main lease provisions. You don't want to get trapped in a situation where you think you have leverage in a certain situation, but the lease says something different. So you want to become literate in all these concepts so that you can be informed and not have any types of false sense of security or anything like that. You also want it to be a check and balance. So when you do work with a property manager, you know what it looks like to do a good job and do a bad job. You know, I always think of it this way: if you're a buy and hold investor and your goal is to hold your properties for decades, the chances that the initial property manager that you hire is going to just magically be there for decades without retiring, or the company growing too much or the company shutting down, very low, very low. So at some point you're probably going to have to make a transition. Even if you have a golden 10-year stretch with that property manager, at some point, as with everything in life, it will come to an end. And so you might have a period of time where you need to take it over for a short period, or you need to make a transition. And just having that knowledge and knowing what to look for, I think every investor can stand to learn. And one of the best books I read that is a really easy read that helped with this mindset was Brandon Turner's. I think it's called The Book on Property Management, and he does a really good job of just trying to tool your mindset to think more like a manager. And one very self-admitted weakness of mine is like I generally want to be everyone's friend, and that applies to my tenants too. And that actually makes me bad at self-managing, and that's part of the reason. Again, we'll unpack why I made the switch, but I have a really hard time separating the personal element from the business element. And if somebody asks for help, I tend to want to give it to them, whether or not unfortunately, sometimes people ask for help, and when they see that you're willing to give it, they'll push, 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 and take more. And so, me trying to be empathetic or supportive or compassionate can oftentimes backfire. And I think there's a balance. There's a dial, and you want to be in the right spot. You want to be a compassionate landlord. You want to give people a good place to live and make it feel like their home without them walking all over you. So I think that's the nuance and the difficult balance of it.
Okay. I'm gonna try something, so maybe you guys can lead this real quick. But Hyder is saying the links that I'm putting are not showing up. So I'm thinking what I have to do is show paste it from YouTube. But if anyone else out there, help me out. I'm always testing stuff out. So actually, right now, if you guys haven't noticed, I don't have a mic in front of me. I'm using this different mic I'm testing out. So if my audio is bad, let me know. But yeah, I think Aaron, that's a great point. I think that's kind of why I'm kind of doing like a hybrid style also, because that was my concern. Because the property manager that I do work with, the primary one, is great. But he also flips homes on the side and he has other things that he's working on. So I was always concerned, like, man, what if he gets too big on the flipping side and then he starts either losing focus on my properties or he just starts veering towards that as his primary business. So that's also why I want to kind of get into the self-managing and hybrid a little bit. So like you're saying, if an emergency did come up and I had to take over my portfolio, I'm not going in completely blind or having to just hire the next property manager that's willing to take on my properties, right? And then I'm in a bad situation. Um, but yeah, let's see. What else can we
Yeah.
talk about on this topic?
Oh
You got
yeah,
anything else?
and yeah, I guess following up with that too is that the scariest thing for me was actually coming up with the long-term contract. Was I was making sure that I had everything there, wanted to get it signed off. I was like, oh, this could be bad. So that was another reason why I went with the property management because they had something that was locked in, dialed in, ready to go. I was just like, oh, okay, it's another thing that helps you sleep at night, and that was yeah, Aaron, I follow along with you as that. I'm trying to empathize, work with them, but then you're realizing that some tenants they might want to take advantage of that, and that was something that I knew right away. I was like, okay, let's make the first few years maybe property management, and then go from there.
It's also a scalability thing, right? Like I think when you
Yeah,
have a handful, let's say like 4 or under, especially if you're in the same market, typically even if you have a job, even if you have a family, if you have good systems, you can handle that capacity because it's not overwhelming. That's not that many people or different situations to look after. But part of the what ended up making us make the transition is we have 8 properties across 3 states. So there's not only 8 structures, each structure has its own capital expenses, it has its own appliances, it has its own people. Each of those people have their own life stories and scenarios and backgrounds. It's a lot of different situations to manage simultaneously. And sometimes there would be, I think the record I set without having any repair requests while I was self managing was 6 months, where I basically didn't hear anything for 6 months. And then naturally, as you would expect, the following month, there were 5 houses that had problems within a 7-day stretch, right? So
yeah,
there is a capacity thing where you get this false sense of security that because something hasn't happened for a while, oh yeah, I can keep self-managing. It's totally easy. But then inevitably things, especially the more houses you have, the more likely it is that something goes wrong at one or even multiple. And when multiple go wrong at the same time, and you're in the middle of a work day or you're with your kids, uh, it's not only literally disruptive, but it is mentally and emotionally disruptive too, because it pulls you away from things that, at least in my life recently, my priorities have shifted much more towards protecting that time. And that's why I was kind of ultimately willing to shift and cede control from self-management over to property management. The other thing on the personal front, right, is like I have a 3-year-old daughter and I have 1-year-old twins. And during both of those births in the hospital, I had quote unquote emergency situations at one of our rentals, separate rentals, but both involved me taking phone calls moments before and moments after the birth of my children. And if you think about that, that's kind of messed up. It was
yeah,
a choice. We knew self-managing that we were responsible for taking care of these things no matter when they occurred, right? But that's just
right,
kind of symbolic that you're in the hospital enjoying one of these magical moments, and I was still able to enjoy the moments. But you think about that and you extrapolate that and you say, okay, do I really want this stuff infringing that deeply into my personal life, or do I want to create a little more guardrails and barriers? So those are just like a few little anecdotes of kind of where my shift has come from in the last year.
right. That's a great point because I mean, yeah, I have a baby due within the next week, so it's like the idea of having to take phone calls while in the delivery room or something like that. It's like, yeah, that's another good point. That's peace of mind right there.
Well, apparently the links don't work. So I have to
Uh-oh.
go, I have to research this on maybe I can't put links during the lives. I don't know. So I got to research this. Hey, what's up, Ike? Ike is here. He's a firefighter that has a very weird schedule. He doesn't have as many days off as I do. Not sure why. Um, but Frank did make a good point here. Where was his? He said, "Here we go." He said he interviewed a property manager the other day, and he actually said he sold his properties because it felt like a conflict of interest, and some of his clients might think he was taking care of theirs. So, yeah, that's an interesting point too. I think even like sometimes when you're a realtor, right, and you deal with clients, and I think that's why sometimes realtors use that as a reason why they don't have investment properties, because they're like, I don't, it's like a conflict of interest. It's like, am I providing the best service when it's a property that I should be investing in, maybe. Have you ever dealt with that? Any of your property managers saying they don't invest, or they don't, or they sold off their properties for those reasons?
I'm actually the opposite. I like the idea of having someone who owns properties because they actually focus it. Like basically, my property manager is a group of people that just got together, said, "Hey, we have a bunch of properties. Let's kind of get the biggest bang for our buck for fixes and everything." And I was like, "Yeah, this is a great plan." And they've been on top of everything. So I'm actually on the opposite side of that property manager.
Yeah, I don't think I faced that exact scenario, but I generally like the real estate professionals that I work with to be investors themselves as well, because they actually have that experience. They don't necessarily have skin in the game on my house, but they have skin in the game on a house or multiple, and so they know what it feels like to go through a bad event, or have something mismanaged that costs a bunch of money. They, again, back to that empathy, they can understand that feeling, and therefore I think there's probably a bigger incentive to avoid. Um, Unfortunately, like on this topic of property managers in general, I think the business model itself is a bit broken, because you have these kind of mom and pop, upstart property managers that maybe they manage a couple dozen, and usually those type of people provide really good service because they have a small portfolio, and maybe they manage a handful of their own units, and then they take on two or three other investors. I've worked with people that size, and I actually tend to have a better experience with the smaller management. The problem is those situations rarely last very long, because they'll either scale their business and take on more and more units to make it worth their while, and then they become too busy, and then they have to hire people, which then increases their costs, and then they have to scale more, and then they have to hire more people, and all of a sudden the quality of the service you got when it was just you and a couple other investors is out the window, unless they're really, really good at growing and scaling companies, which I hate to say it, but most property managers are not. That's not the skill set that they were graced from the heavens with, right?
Yeah.
Usually they're good at fixing problems in a pinch, and maybe dealing with tenants and putting on that business face. But like growing and scaling a company to manage hundreds of units is a different skill entirely. And I don't believe that most property managers are very good at that. I'd say my hit rate on finding a good property manager that I actually enjoy working with and believe that they're going to have a long shelf life, pretty small percentage, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Let's see. Kyle has I don't know if not really a question, but maybe his view on it. But he says self-managing and pro-tenant versus pro-landlord state seems like it could sway a decision. And then All Nighter Hider kind of just has his viewpoint on it. Says he would actually have less trust in a property manager in a tenant-friendly state. He would want all the control there. But Hyder also wants to clarify that he's also studied law, so maybe that's why he feels more comfortable in that sense. But what's your guys' take on that? Do you think it matters what type of where you invest as far as tenant or landlord-friendly state?
So I own on both ends of the spectrum. Iowa and Nevada are pretty landlord friendly, and then I also own property in Washington, which is one of the most tenant friendly states. And I'm not in Seattle area, so Washington state regulations are pretty strict, and then Seattle has their own overlays on top of that are even more strict. And these are the type of stories you see in Bigger Pockets articles about people it taking 8 months to get somebody out, and there's almost no circumstances in which you can actually evict somebody if they have any type of legal counsel. there's lots of companies that'll provide free legal counsel to tenants on how they can stay in properties, even if they're not paying. So, I mean, they're really, these scenarios are real. It's not, a bunch of, what do you call it? Fear mongering, right? Like these scenarios are
Right.
actually possible in those type of states. And for all those reasons, and I have not studied law, I don't think I would want to self-manage in those situations. I'll just like one other small example. In Washington, if a fixed term lease ends, so if somebody's on a 12-month lease and then it reverts to month, once you get to month, they actually have way more protections under Washington state law than if they were on a term lease. Like these are things that we learned, thankfully without major consequence, but we learned this because we had a hard time getting somebody out when they were on a month lease and we wanted to move on. And so like these are lessons that, yes, we're learning as we go, but a good property manager and somebody who actually understands the local rules and regulations and they understand the eviction process. I almost actually think of a property manager more as an insurance policy against these bad situations than I do as someone that I really need on a daily basis. If all I'm doing is taking a few phone calls, collecting rent, calling a vendor here and there, I can do that. I don't need a property manager for that. But where I do feel like I need them is for emergencies or evictions or things that are going to involve repeated presence. So I don't know, like I'm of the mind that I would rather engage with a property manager in these complex situations than step away from it.
Yeah, I follow up with that. That's why we didn't buy in Oregon, because it was the same thing. Was that we were renters there, and then we realized that as if we went month to month, it's a little bit more expensive, but somehow we could potentially get our way out of it. But we were the honest rentees and everything, so we just wanted to make sure that. But it did make it obvious that it's okay. We're not going to buy here, so we're going back to Virginia. So, but yeah. That's a good point, Aaron.
I was trying to find it because I think I remember what you were talking about, Aaron. I don't know if you saw. I think somebody posted it in the Facebook One Rental at a Time group. They were talking about, I guess, Oregon. Like I think like you were saying, when they go month to month, or you have to renew them or something, or you also have to pay for them moving and all these different requirements that were in there. But yeah, we'll figure that out next time how to share it quickly. But yeah, we got Daniel stopping by. I haven't seen you here before, but thanks for stopping by, Daniel. And we're close to 50 viewers, looks like. So that's great. I mean, that's amazing because Lauren's not here today. So usually when Lauren's here, we get over the 50 mark. So for us to be getting that close without Lauren is pretty impressive. So hopefully my content is getting out there more. Maybe because Aaron's connected his channel too. So if not, if you can go check out Aaron's channel, just subscribe and show some support on that side also. But yeah, you guys want to stay on this topic? You guys have anything more you guys want to say about this, or you guys want to move on to some other things? Or
I have one more like kind of nugget I'll add, right? So I at one point ran an analysis on our Vegas properties. We self-managed them up until quite literally just a couple months ago. So about 5 years total of self-managing. And I ran the math on how much money did we save on management fees, and it was upwards of I think it was $32,000 total, which is not that much over 5 years, but it's also not nothing. And what I want to share though is that is a deceptive figure to say that you just saved $32,000, because there also undoubtedly was cost. If a really good property manager was in there being really proactive about preventative maintenance and tracking all the capex and being more proactive than we were, arguably we would have spent less on repairs and maintenance and capex. So I do think that there's like the 32K, and then somewhere in the middle is where it really is as far as savings, because we certainly cost ourselves money by choosing to self-manage, and we are not the best self-managers. We can do it. That's what I kind of fall back on. Like, we have the skill, we can do it, we can survive. We can still run a profitable portfolio, but definitely not as well as a professional who is actually really good at it. So I think that's one, thing I'll add. Second is like really doubling on what I said a minute ago. Emergencies and like extraordinary circumstances are when you really, like, the property manager to me is more of an insurance policy for those situations. 2 times over the last 7 months, there was a homeless encampment in the lot behind one of our rentals. and they lit fires that burned down the fence into our yard. And in the first scenario, we were self-managing, and it was, I think I want to say it was July 3rd or something. So it was the holiday weekend leading. So it was a weekend and a holiday, and we're self-managing. We didn't have a property manager at the time. So just having to deal with that like emergency situation, that's 2 hours before a different time zone. And so basically all morning I was trying to figure out frantically how to contact these different vendors and leverage like different relationships that we had in Vegas. I mean, it became, it's not like I spent 8 hours straight on it, but it became this burden for basically 3 to 4 days of resolving this and getting our tenants feeling safe and secure. Well, that same situation happened 3 days ago, unfortunately, the same lot. This time we have a property manager. We were still involved, but we were able to divide and conquer. Our property manager was very proactive, actually went to a community meeting, met with the local police, and they were able to do all this stuff on the ground to address the longer term issue of that vacant lot and the homeless encampment and a lot of stuff that we just simply can't do from Houston. And so I just like that, try and paint a picture of like two different, same scenario, but two different setups, and how one was much easier to go through than the other.
Well. We have the famous Ned here popping in. So thanks for joining us today, man.
Sorry about being late. I got my time zones wrong.
Oh, don't worry about it, man. We're glad to haven't seen you in a while. Happy New Year, man.
Happy New Year.
Hopefully, I'm assuming, everything good. New Orleans, you were safe.
Yeah, everything. What happened? Right. Oh, yeah, that thing. Yeah. One of the kids in my high school, I think, was one of the victims. But other than that, I don't really know anybody.
Man, crazy times out there, man. But I don't know if you want to if you had any input on self-managing or property managing. We're kind of just wrapping things up to maybe move on to other stuff. But I don't know if you want to throw in your 2 cents or if you had any experience with it.
I've always done kind of a hybrid, since most of my properties, especially in the beginning, were house hacks. So I always self-managed when I lived in it, just to kind of get to know a property and how the expenses were. So I knew what the water bills normally were. I knew what electric normally was, or like, hey, these parts of the houses have issues. And I kind of got to know it that way. And then after I'd gotten a good feel for it, then I felt comfortable letting someone else manage it. Just so, I don't know. That was the way I always did it. I always self-managed initially, and then I'd hand it off. That way I didn't have to necessarily like cross my fingers and hope that a property manager was telling me the truth and everything. It made it easier to manage the manager. So.
Very good point. I think this is your first time meeting Aaron, though, right? I don't think you and Aaron have connected yet, or
I don't believe so.
Good to meet you, man.
So Aaron also has a remote real estate academy on Mighty. He's also part of the school community and ORAC community. He's also a coach for Coach Carson. You want to talk about that a little bit, Aaron?
Yeah. So I'm grateful to have built a relationship with Coach Chad Carson. He wrote the Small and Mighty Real Estate Investor. If you're watching, you can see I got it on my shelf here. But I align very closely with his philosophy, which is you don't have to buy 1,000 units to get to your goals. It's kind of optimizing for what's the fewest amount of properties you need in order to get to your long-term financial goals. But I joined his community, and I've been helping him out with just running some of his like small groups. So I do some group coaching for him in his group. But he's got a great thing going where all his kind of courses, and he has all his courses bundled and available if you're a member. And then he does coaching, and then he has other coaches help out. So it's like anybody, if you're trying to scale a rental portfolio, can definitely benefit from what he's got to offer too.
Yeah, and I think it's a great combination of that with your remote real estate academy, because even like you sent someone my way that was looking at investing from New York, looking at investing in Pittsburgh, so they're going to invest out of state, and you connected me with Willis, and that was a great connection. And I think you just kind of touched on it, like you relate to Coach Carson's message. And I think, Harrison is wearing the shirt, but that's also why, like Frank, the shirt he made on the back, it kind of says, I found my tribe. So I think that's kind of very important to what we're all trying to do. We're trying to find the right people that have the same vision or same passion, and just want to help everyone out. And I think that's what the ORAD event is about. So if you can, make it to Vegas in February. We'd love to all meet in person. I believe everyone on here today is going to be there, correct? And it should be a lot of fun. But yeah, let's maybe move on a little bit. Let's see. So I am going to share this one right now. So this is the one that I saw on X. Steve Millionaire. He's very he has a big following on there, and I think his message is kind of, I've learned over the years that things are never as easy or as difficult as you make them out to be. So you guys find that true, or what's you guys' thoughts on that?
I do. I mean, I think the concept there is basically, it's usually a combination of like anxiety and analysis paralysis, where most people spend too much time in their own head stewing over what the right or wrong decision is, versus actually taking any type of action and getting feedback from the world. No matter what you do, whether you're building a product or finding a tenant or trying to buy a house, it's all about like putting things out there into the world and seeing what the reaction you get back is. Now, of course, you want to be careful, you want to be methodical, but I do fully agree that most people are good at thinking about things, and there's not as many people that do the things that they think about. If that makes sense.
Yeah, I agree. It's the follow through that's always the hardest part, and that's something where I know I do very well just jumping into the deep end for just getting work done. But sometimes when it comes to planning, that's actually where I get my analysis paralysis. If I'm overthinking of, well, what if this happens, that happens, this happens, but sometimes I just kind of open the door, say, I don't care, let's go for it. And that's something I've had to learn for, as I don't know, someone who's a little bit more cautious, is just open the door. Sometimes it's just, you don't know what's going to happen, but something good might happen.
So, Ned, before you hopped on, we were kind of talking about how you had to deal with a lot of struggles. Do you think that kind of maybe prepared you for perspective on things, in a sense? Like maybe that was, I would assume that might have been the most challenging thing for you to deal with.
You talking about my brain surgery, or?
Yes. Well, like I said, I'm hoping that's probably the most difficult thing you had to go through. But if not, there's a lot more we need to talk about there.
Yeah. I don't know. I got kind of lucky, whereas like I always, whether it's business or like personal life challenges like that, I've always kind of viewed the people around me as like, you want to make sure that those people are a good team, whether that's for moral or spiritual or business support or whatever. I mean, I think you've heard me tell the story before, but one of my favorite stories to kind of go over, and it's kind of like shaped the way I go about things, is when I got out of my brain surgery. I remember laying there, and the first thing I thought of was, that scene in Kill Bill where she's laying there and she can she's like, all right, just move your big toe. And when I woke up, I couldn't move anything. And I looked down and I was like, I wonder if I can wiggle. This is like Kill Bill. And so I got to where I could wiggle my toe. And then within an hour or two, that they had me trying to go down the hall with a walker. I'd learned how to walk, talk, do almost everything all over again. I couldn't remember how to do math, which is weird. I could look at math equations and tell you the answer, but I couldn't tell you why. So there's a bunch of weird neurological stuff that didn't make any sense at the time, but it was, looking back on it, it was kind of like I guess you'd call it a formative experience. And when I was leaving the hospital, case in point, the doctor said, hey, whenever you go to grab food or go watch TV or go to the bathroom, it's try and move more this time than you did last time. But I misheard him. And I thought he said move twice as much. And in my head, I was like, well, that's going to be a lot after a week or so. And so I remember got home. I didn't question it because I was like, he's the doctor. He must know, not realizing I misheard him. And I remember going like, all right, got to go to the bathroom. First time, second time I went to the bathroom, literally to the bathroom, back to the bed, to the bathroom. And then I was like, all right, now I can. And y'all could see how over about a week, this got a little out of control. It got to where I was like, oh man, I got to go to the bathroom. I don't want to walk around the block. And at the time I lived like basically across the street from a park. So I went downstairs and it got to where I would, there was like a golf course and I would walk to the end of the 18th hole and then back into the house to like grab food from the kitchen. And eventually within like 2 or 3 weeks got to where I'd walk around the whole. And the thing was, is like, I just kind of stupidly, but also my wife, who's a physical therapist, came back and she's like, well, the thing you need to do to recoup or get better at things is just volume when you're trying to relearn how to use stuff. And so I just stubbornly pushed ahead. And I remember getting back to the doctor for my like 1 month or anywhere from 2 to 4 week checkup. The doctor was like, how is he getting around the house? And I was like, well, I hate to say it, but I got to where, it was just too much work. So I started, instead of just doubling the amount, I mean, my 1 mile run is like 14 minutes instead of back at, like 9 where it used to be. And he was like, what? So super not advised, not medical advice. Don't do that. But I learned that, if you just put the effort in, that a lot of times it'll pay off. And the thing I've learned with my businesses after that is, the shiny thing syndrome kind of kills us all. So it's better to just stupidly go forward at your one mission, which in my case was like go twice as far as you did last time, versus every business I've had that started to work where I was like, cool, now that this is kind of working, let's do this other thing. It's like, no, just do more of the thing that is giving you the best feedback and the best improvements. And it's boring, but I mean, like, honestly, that's where I'm at with real estate now. I keep having ideas of like, oh, well, it'd be cool if I got into self-storage. Well, what about short-term rentals? Well, what about, there's so many things you could do where like the thing that we're all doing is probably working. And if you just did that again, 70 more times or 5 more times or 2 more times or whatever your number is, yeah, it's going to be the same thing. It's kind of like monotonous. It's just, that's the hardest part for me as a business operator at this point, is realizing it's like, hey, if I just do one more rental, like I'm not going to be big enough to affect the whole market unless I'm in like a tiny rural town, but I don't know. It feels boring, but it's okay. Like, I feel like not enough people talk about how it's okay to just do the same thing again. Like, it doesn't need to be the newest Instagram or TikTok or whatever trend. Like, just do it again. I don't know.
So, would you say it's maybe more of a completionist in that way?
Yeah, if I play a video game, I want all the achievements. I'm the guy who's like, oh man, if I just pick up one more magic mushroom or whatever, like, collect what was it in, oh man, where you collect 100 of whatever trinket is in the game, or I don't know. But yeah, I've always been kind of a completionist. Just kind of do the thing, get it optimized, and go do it. Then go do another one. And that's honestly, if you do that, you're gonna be better each time, kind of indefinitely. Like, you're not gonna figure out the code because I thought I had my neighborhood figured out. Then Ida hit, and suddenly insurance rates change, and the whole market that I was super used to in New Orleans was suddenly not the same market anymore, just because one factor changed, which messed everything up. So,
well, we got some. I don't know if I'm saying it right, and I think we got Francois from X, and I think this is I didn't really realize it because I'm not sure, because before you couldn't share it, but he did post something on X. So I'll share it here. And he's kind of what we're talking about too, is growing revenue rather than growing your portfolio is a great message. And I think that kind of relates back to even like the self-managing or property manager, right? Sometimes just becoming more efficient. And instead of, you don't have to scale much bigger, but if maybe you take over self-managing and become more efficient, and now that's how you're going to increase revenue. And I don't know if that's why you mentioned short-term rentals, Ned, but in his kind of question or comment, he does mention, short-term rentals are a great way to maximize revenue. But we also got VT, the big bad beard here. I think I seen him here last week, but thanks for stopping by. Perfection is the enemy of good enough, Ned. That's what he said.
See, I kind of challenge that sometimes. Yeah, I'm glad you brought up your story, Ned, because a year and a half ago I had cancer, and I actually did my midway scan like halfway through. All growths were gone. Everything was great. I was like, excellent. We can finish early. Don't call me, doc. I'll call you. He said before I walked out, no, you need to do the whole treatment because it may not show up, but it could still come back really fast. And
Yeah.
sometimes you need to do that completion to make sure that it's gone. I mean, good enough, I agree. It's for a lot of things, but for sometimes it's like, especially with real estate, I'm like, I'm not going to do a project halfway or just good enough. I want to make sure that it's over engineered and fixed so that I don't have to worry about it. Like Aaron was saying, it's like, I don't want to have to keep coming back to this. I want it to be done. And at least for a while, I don't have to worry about it.
I think that's why a lot of people have reached out to me about Aaron's remote real estate academy, is because they see Aaron, like in the school community or even posting things on social media. He's very detail oriented, and he's I don't know if perfectionist is the right way to put it, but I think they like his systems that he has in place. So I think that's why they're very interested in the remote real estate academy, because that's what they're trying to get more efficient at, is their systems. And is that kind of the things that people can kind of find in the academy, Aaron?
Yeah, I appreciate that shout out, Mark. Yeah, I think like I was kind of mentioning at the beginning of this question, there's like a dial, right? On one side, you have bias for action and people who have no problem kind of getting out there and trying stuff, even if it's not fully baked. And then on the other side, you have this kind of analysis paralysis where you just keep searching for information, searching for validation, searching for something that's going to make you feel fully confident to take action. And finding that sweet spot on the dial is where you can really kind of have best of both worlds, my personal opinion. But yeah, as far as also kind of playing off what Francois said, anyone can buy rentals that lose money. Anyone can go out and buy a property. To buy a property and run it profitably over a long period of time is a totally different skill set. And so, yeah, having good systems, paying attention to your expenses, and like actually auditing your own business. And I always call it a business, even though I know most people would rather me call it a passive, income stream. I'm pretty averse to the term passive because I think it's misrepresentative. Unless you've completely scaled yourself out of your business, it is still a business that you have to pay attention to. And so a lot of what we teach is just, how do you kind of install systems along the way, even if you only have one property, so that you're building your system for 10 properties when you only have one. And then as you kind of approach these milestones of scaling, you can keep doing it in a way where your systems aren't going to break. Like you're building ahead of where you are so that again, you can still manage it kind of within your lifestyle that you want to live, and not have your systems break every time you buy a new property. So yeah, that is a focus, right? Is profitability and then systems to make sure it doesn't kind of expand and take over other important parts of your life.
Yeah, VT, the big bad beard, says spot on, Aaron. My sentiments exactly. So I think, yeah.
Hey, I really like passive investors. I like buying properties from them after they fail.
I think that is I don't want to get too much into it, but one of my friends, he did start buying rentals. And I think that was, he was hoping for it to be very passive. And I think that's why he struggled, because he didn't want to do, I don't know if networking is the right way to put it, but just communicating with different people, right? Finding other people in the market he's in, or asking questions about certain things, or, he was just basically taking the properties manager's word for things, right? And I was telling him, hey man, this doesn't add up, or this doesn't make sense. I mean, are you talking to other property managers? Are you talking to other people in your market? And yeah, like he just kind of looked at it as something that he wanted to be very passive, and he ended up having to sell a few, just part of it just to kind of get over the headache, I believe. Let's see here. Yeah. Let's see. Let's see. I'm back. Got the bot. Oh, okay. No worries, Hyder. Thanks for stopping by. I know there's a bunch of stuff going on right now. There's like Dion has a live going on. I know School Community has the Out of State Investing group going on right now. But we are over 50 viewers combined on all platforms. So that's great. Like I said, Lauren's not here. So that's a record, I think, for us to getting to that amount without Lauren on here. But I know, Ned, maybe this is something you can touch on a little bit more because I know you do insurance. But this is let's see, this is from on Twitter also. Default. Oh, no, not this one. Right, this one from Jason Calcanis from the All In podcast. He says, kind of imagine paying insurance on your home for 30 years, never using it, and then having it canceled 6 months before it burns to the ground.
Oof.
Yeah.
I
So
mean,
I
if your
don't-
insurance is canceled, you can get new insurance. That's
Yeah, but I know California is having a tough time. A lot of companies are pulling out, right? And it's even like New Orleans, right? I think you guys are having some insurance issues, and as far as cost of it, and is it challenging to find insurance in your market?
so State Farm as is one of the majors that has recently come back. And just for example, one of my fourplexes, the shout out to Lumberjack Landlord, him and I were talking, and he brought up State Farm. And I was like, I don't think they're around. And then we figured out that because my quote for renewal this year is 25,000 on my fourplex. My new quote that came back in was 14,000. So that's all to the net. That's all bottom line right there. So that's a big help. But I mean, at the same time, and a lot of I'm not going to get too much into Louisiana specifically. So I work in the industry. I don't want to ruffle any feathers.
Right.
But a lot of times you get what you vote for. And you know, that's just the way it works. If you, for example, keep on putting people in office who try and make it to where whenever there's a claim that the judicial system always sides with the homeowner, then sorry, costs go up for the insurance companies. They're not going to not charge you for it. And then if those laws are so strict and so onerous that insurance companies can't make money, then they're just going to leave. So, I mean, the only way to really fix a problem is to reel in the lawyers and fix the laws and deregulate so insurance companies can come in and try and compete with each other, because you can't regulate the law down. You can't regulate the prices down. You got to get enough companies to come into your area to compete and push the prices down. There's just no other way to do it. And if you scare everybody away except for one or two of the local guys or big guys, then they can do whatever they want on pricing. So,
yeah, we don't want to ruffle any feathers here. So just but
I'm not naming anyone specifically.
no, I totally agree. I mean, yeah, I think hopefully, the sadness or the fires that are going on in California is, like you're saying, a lot of it it's very unfortunate, but yeah, a lot of times it's who's in office, right? Who people are voting for and the policies they make, and sometimes there's bad results for bad policies, and yeah, I mean, you're not going to be able to prevent fires, but at the same time, there's probably things that could be done with resources and funding and a lot of that. So
yeah, I don't know enough about it, but I mean, I've heard people say that there's things they can do with forest management that would prevent a lot of that stuff. And I know California tends to have like weird practices where like, well, we can't clear the forest of brush over there because we're going to mess with the endangered, I don't know, trumpet frog or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And then like they could have their water issue they have right now. I remember they voted to not put in a desalinization plant off the coast of, I want to say, Los Angeles, because of some issue that it was going to cause with plankton within a 1 mile radius around the desalinization plant. So
like, no, yeah.
So
Yep.
a lot of these, maybe each of those decisions individually didn't cause the issue, but I'm sure if you went and looked at all of the votes that were decided over 20 years that had to do with water or insurance or whatever, they add up. It's compound interest, but with just legal instead, you know?
Yep, totally agree. I think a lot of it, there's a lot of things that, like I said, I mean, we don't know for sure, but there is things they probably could have done. And it's not just like something that happened in the past year, right? It's something that
Right.
probably was over a 20-year policies that were put in place, and then they kind of just compounded on each other. And let's see, VT was asking where Jack is. Yeah, Jack is pretty popular on this channel. He's the potato hat wearing guy, but Jack is very entertaining. But go check out his channel, because apparently when I put the links in, they're not working. But go check out Jack's business talk. He's doing a lot of cool stuff out there, a lot of shorts. But yeah, you guys, Harrison, Aaron, you guys have any issues with getting insurance, or you guys insurance going up quite a bit this past year?
I'll make one comment on insurance. So I live in Houston, which is pretty close to the Gulf, prone to storms, historically pretty tough market for insurance. We just moved here in August of 2023. We moved into a home where already we felt the insurance was pretty expensive. And then our renewal in 2024 was 40% higher. There's never been a claim on this house. We have reasonably good claims history ourselves. And so that tweet that you showed from Jason, where it talks about basically, you never made a claim, but you're getting punished for the external factors. And, ours didn't get canceled, but it did go up through no direct input of our own actions. And so I think the point I would try and make there is like, we can't really do much about this on an individual level. Yes, like totally hear the point on paying attention to the policies. And, in general, I feel like you should vote regardless of what you're voting for, right? Like you should be informed and try and participate in things, especially the things that might impact you. But overall, we have very little control over what happens in the insurance market as a whole.
Right.
And so I think when you go, part of why I like remote investing is that you can choose to invest where you want based on what you're looking for. And so if avoiding this type of situation and the climate risk and the impact that has on insurance is something you don't want to deal with, there are great markets that have insurance issues, but there are also great markets that don't have those same issues. And so teaching yourself, learning how to pick a market and, adapt it to what you're actually looking for, I think is a great skill. And then not trying to get too hung up on things you can't control, because at the end of the day, we're still planning to live in Houston. It still fits our family's, phase of life that we're in and the objectives that we have. But we're probably going to, get beat over the head a little bit on our insurance renewals, and we just have to accept that.
Yeah, that's a great point. I actually chose markets that were very consistent with their insurance. I worked in insurance a while ago, and so I was very cognizant of that. And so no raises yet, knock on wood, but I guess in Virginia right now we're at the no water. I don't know if you heard about that, but it's just, so we have our own problems, but insurance right now thankfully isn't one of them.
All right, we got jokes going on in the comments right now. I'm trying to keep up with them. But yeah. Wait, what's this no water thing?
He's salty.
No, you. What'd you just say?
Me? Oh, yeah. So Richmond, because of the storm, it looks like there all the fail safes stopped. So we had snow, the pipes froze, all the mitigation, the power went out as well, and so all water pressure disappeared, and the water in the system was boil only. So we're finally getting water pressure back, but we're still boil only until unforeseeable future. So, and then water mains are breaking left and right. So it's thankfully I don't live in those areas. I know it's character building. So, but yeah, so that's been the fun part. I know it's like with the whole fires happening in California, we're thankfully, but we're being kind of sidelined in the news for that.
We just need January 20th to come. Everything would change after that.
Magically, he'll just wave a wand.
Yep. All right. Well, this was a good one. We're at about an hour. I mean, I don't mind staying on. I got nothing else going on. If you guys got to bounce, you guys can bounce. But if you guys want to talk about anything else or
I want to highlight one
I can keep
thing.
going.
Go
I
ahead.
want to
man.
highlight one thing Ned said that I thought was really, poignant. Right when you start to make progress or get really good at something, if you shift gears and go take on something else and ignore what was working, like that's probably one of the most critical mistakes. Mistake is subjective, but like that could be a turning point in your journey where you choke off something that's working and you go shift towards something that's unproven in your own world. If you do that 3 or 4 times, it's pretty easy for 2, 3, 4 years to go by with a bunch of half-baked ideas that never pan out. So I do think that that was a really good point. And when it comes to stuff like trying to squeeze more
3 failed
yield, or
startups, $250,000 gone to that.
Ooh.
3, he said.
3 startups, $250,000 just set on fire doing that. I had to sell my house, move back in with my parents twice.
Yeah.
I didn't sell a house. The second time I was renting. I still had to move back in.
Actually, there was something I was going to say, and I forgot to bring it up, but we were talking about kind of things not being as easy or as hard as they seem. I don't know if you guys ever backed up trailers and things like that, where you're supposed to, you're trying to make the trailer go right, so you got to turn left, and you're using your side mirrors. So basically, you can't use your rear view mirror like if you have a big trailer. So it's kind of like you can't overcorrect things. Like once you start seeing in the mirror is kind of when you're going to straighten out. If you make too much corrections, now you're gonna lose the direction the truck's going to go in, or the load's going to go in. So I kind of see a lot of that, like in life investing is kind of like you're going to make small corrections. If you start overcorrecting things, now you're going to get yourself in trouble, or head in a different direction in a sense. And I think you guys all kind of touched on that too. Is just sometimes you're just becoming more efficient at what you're doing, instead of just trying to always go bigger, or like Ned touched on, the shiny object syndrome. But Hyder I forgot where we were talking about this, but Hyder, I don't know if you guys knew about this. We were talking about some economic data or what the government puts out there. But there's FASB 56 is good enough for investment purposes. So like a lot of times the government, when they put out their information, their economic data, it's not necessarily false or inaccurate. It's just the information they're required to put out there. It only has to be good enough for investment purposes because of, I guess, global concerns, I guess, security reasons. So yeah, I found that very interesting. Hey, my backup trailer is getting some thumbs up. I like that.
Good.
See, I don't just make up shit out here.
See, you got more audience response from backing up the trailer story than you did from FASB 56.
Well,
Yeah.
no, I found that very interesting because a lot of times, we're always like, oh, there's fake information, or they're correcting it, or they're not. There's false data. But like Hyder brought up, a lot of times it's information good enough or close enough to the truth for investment purposes, where they're not really lying to you, but at the same time, it's not maybe the exact data that they're filtered for national security reasons.
Oh.
So where my head kind of goes with that is like all of this data that gets published, whether it's from the government or independent research firms, the question I always ask is like, what impact does that actually have on the decisions I have to make for the business I'm trying to build? And the answer 9 times out of 10 for a lot of that data is nothing. Like it doesn't actually impact what I'm going to do and my overall thesis about building a portfolio of cash flowing rentals that have solid fundamentals without taking on too much leverage. Like a lot of those parameters exist no matter what the external, maybe if the country was burning down and we were in the middle of a nuclear war, then we'd have bigger problems anyway. So like, yeah. I don't know. I don't mean to skirt around the actual question about the data, but I always apply that lens and try not to get too wrapped up in all these different reports and information that comes out if it's not actually impacting what I'm doing.
Very true. But before we get into Joe V's question that Ned kind of replied to already in the comments, yeah, Joe, shut your ass. But Ned, I'm gonna just have to tell you, because some other people have mentioned to me, the clacking on the keyboard interrupts hearing people. So
Sorry.
No. I saw other people have mentioned that to me. So, like I said, I'm always taking feedback from people. So, like some people like this portrait mode that I've been doing. Some people don't like it. So I'm always trying to play around with new things. But so I've been better trying to mute myself because apparently, I guess my keyboard you can hear it when I'm typing. But Jovi does say they're going to have to spread the insurance cost to everyone across the country. And then Ned, who said, most companies are regional. No one is big enough to spread the risk and maintain a good rate of return. Yeah, I think a lot of people would think, yeah, it would be spread across the country. But, like I said, Ned has experience with this, so he has a better understanding of it.
Most companies are, there are very few ultra major, massive insurance companies that just insure in every single state.
Yeah.
Usually it's kind of like looking for a good market for a rental. They look around and say, hey, look, the rate of return on insurance in this market is good because this is what the rates are. This is what the regulations say I can have the rates be. There's literally rent control in the form of what rates can be in California. You can only raise them so much or whatever. Can you keep up with inflation or legal costs and stuff like that? And so it's kind of like, is there there are very few landlords that just own enough across America to where they're like, you know what? It's okay that Chicago is losing money because I'm making that up in Boca.
Right.
Like, that's not a thing. They're just going to say, we're just not going to write in Chicago anymore because that'll mean that extra yield we're making in Boca or wherever it is isn't going to be offset by losses somewhere else. So insurance companies look at markets, neighborhoods, cities, and states the same way that we look at rental markets. You're looking at what the local rules say we can and can't do, and the decisions that you and your city and your local municipality and all those things decide with laws, and then the way that you handle the legal system and all that affects whether or not your market is attractive for insurers. So you need to make your local market and the way that you treat insurance companies, you need to think about this the same way that you treat landlords. It's counterintuitive, but that's the way they look at each of these local areas is a market that they can choose to be in or not. And if you're going to put all these rules in place where they can't make their yield, they're going to leave. It's pretty simple.
Yeah.
And it's a lot easier to stop writing a policy than it is to sell a rental unit. So.
Do you think they could oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
I was going to say, do you think that maybe some companies like the new tech ones like Lemonade could maximize by like doing reinsurance, like just maybe doing a little bit off the top for more of a national market then?
Can you like rephrase that a little different? I'm not quite
sure. Okay, so say smaller companies taking maybe less profits by going into reinsurance, so maybe going on higher up on the policy and then spreading that across maybe more than just the region.
So you're saying like someone could come in and basically buy the risk off someone who's doing
right,
because like we get reinsurance when we write policies in a new market. We might say, hey, we're going to go write in, I don't know, let's say small dwellings. I'm going to make something up. Like we're going to start writing 5 units to 50 units, and we want to get those in the Southeast or whatever. We might go to Lloyd's of London and say, hey, we're going to write the bottom 50% of the first. They've got like tranches. So you might take the bottom 1 million layer of risk, but you might not have the balance sheet to write 1 million. So you might turn around and go to Lloyd's of London and say, hey, we only want to take 50% or 20% or whatever it is. And then you sell that layer on top to a reinsurance agency. The problem with that is all the profit for that layer goes to whoever buys the risk. The way that they look at it is they say, all right, across your portfolio, the past, it's either if you're a startup and you have no history, they're going to look at your underwriters, the guys who are figuring out your costs, and they're going to say, hey, how have they done in their prior markets? And they're going to say, okay, well, we don't know how you're doing or how you're going to do, because in a lot of cases with like real estate risks, it might take 1 or 3 or 4 or 5 years for that risk to pay out.
Right.
So if you're going to take $1 million in income, you might not know that you actually lost $2 million because you wrote the risk incorrectly until 5 years from now.
Right.
Right. So
Right.
London is going to say, well, we don't know. So you have to carry more risks and we're going to charge you more for it, or we're just not going to write you because you're unknown. So it takes a while for new startups to figure that stuff out. And then additionally, reinsurance costs more. So it'll
Right.
let you grow more and spread your risk as a startup, but you're ending up with the same issue there. Like they're not going to want to write bad business because if they have bad losses for 3 or 4 years,
Right.
London or or any of the reinsurance companies can easily say, hey, you've had a rough couple of years. We're changing your pricing. And then now they can't write anywhere. So, I mean, I think the cure for all this is higher prices over time are going to force states to make a lot of tough decisions.
Yeah.
I know one thing that's kind of I've always found interesting is in a lot of places, like when you vote for judges, you vote for judges to put them in office, right? What happens when a judge sides with an insurance company over their local people too many times? They might not get reelected. Does it affect the judge and his mortgage? Maybe a little bit. But if the judge sides with an insurance company over and over and over again so that he gets reelected over and over again, he's raising the cost of everyone in that area so he can get reelected and make it look like he's a man of the people. When in reality, over the long term, he's elevating the prices for everyone in that region. So there's all these weird nuances of what can and can't affect insurance rates, and that's just like one thing. There's hundreds of things that can affect stuff like that, and it's just a lot of short-term decisions have been made because people are like, well, you can't directly attach me to that, so I don't have the responsibility for that. You know.
Right.
Okay, well, sorry, Ned. We'll get right back to that. But Aaron's gonna have to bounce soon, and I know Mikey Buzztune popped in after the school out-of-state investing call, but he says he's planning to join the academy after Vegas. So maybe Aaron, you can kind of wrap things up for yourself with where can people find the course, or how can they sign up for it? Or so here's the Remote Real Estate Academy, because apparently my links aren't working. So, but yeah, if you want to tell people where they can find it and sign up.
Yeah, I'll make this one really easy. I know we can't share links in the chat here, but it's just remoterealestateacademy.com. It's got everything about kind of what our course is, what's in there, the community, who we serve, kind of our philosophy, and then there's a few freebies on there too. But yeah, anyone that's interested, you can also, if you want to join, you can do join.remoterealestateacademy.com. But feel free to reach out to me. I'm very easy to reach. I'm on X at Aaron Amin. I'm in we were at school. I'm all over the place. So I welcome anybody who wants to reach out and have a chat.
All right, man. Thanks, Aaron. Thanks for doing this. And we'll get you back on again, man.
Thank you for having me.
Good time, man. All right. Well, you guys want to talk about anything else? Anything else on your mind? You guys ready for Vegas?
I'm ready for Vegas. It's the countdown is just I don't know. This is gonna be my first time coming, so I don't know what to expect. I mean, I've heard everyone talk about it, but it's gonna be a unique experience either way.
I know Ned's ready. Ned's a party guy, that's why.
What? You drank way more than I did.
I did not drink at all. I don't drink anymore. Yeah, I don't drink anymore. Yeah, I'm just a fun guy. That's what it is.
Nice.
Naturally fun. No, but yeah, it was a good time. I mean, I think like you said, Harrison, your first time, I think it's gonna be a great experience. I think Trey better, that's what she said. but yeah, I think the Denny's meetups are great. Ned, I forget. I don't think you were there, right? The Denny's meetup.
I did not do the Denny's meetup.
Yeah, that was fun. I mean, I think it's going to be crowded this year. I think a lot of people are planning that's something they're really showing up for. So
Gotcha.
kind of, yeah. So I might have to call in my order or bring food with me or something. See, I was stone cold sober, Buzztoon
See,
said.
there you go.
Yeah. But Harrison is wearing the shirt. So I just want to remind people, if you haven't grabbed your shirt yet, go pick up your ORAT one rental at a time shirt from Old Guy REI. The proceeds will be for the blind center, and trying to donate money to the blind center. And like I said, I found my tribe. It's a great message on the shirt. But yeah, anything else you want to wrap it up with? I don't know if you guys want to talk about, you guys got to go or what you guys got to do. If you want, we can kind of dig into this last tweet that I did have up there. Just if you guys want somebody to talk about, it says defaults on U.S. credit card loans have hit the highest level since 2008. Lower income consumers' financial health is waning after years of high inflation. Any thoughts on this?
So is it like total defaults or is it default amount? Like what's the number there? Because it could easily be more money is being defaulted on, but there are less total defaults because it's not really written in a way that clearly says anything.
Very true, very true. And I think that's like the important thing is kind of just taking things with a grain of salt and kind of stepping back. But I think it's also just important for people to kind of realize what's going on. It may not be as serious as some reports are trying to make it, but at the same time, people still should be kind of understanding, I think, what's going on out there and what situation they're in. I think that's part of the biggest problem. Right? A lot of people are just walking around blindly and not taking their financial situation more seriously and just thinking, I'm fine. I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing. And they don't realize kind of how they're just kind of maybe falling behind further and further, right?
Yeah. I mean, I sold my house to try and fix my cash flow so I could get back to the savings rate I was comfortable with. So, I mean, I never want to be the guy who's crawling into credit card debt to figure stuff out. So ended up taking about a $15,000 loss on that deal. So that sucks.
Yeah, I don't know if you guys saw the Three Amigos the other day, right? They were talking about Economic Ninja made a comment on one of Zuber's lives, and they were talking about I think it was refinances were up, right? And Economic Ninja, who I think he has a bigger channel than Zuber, actually. He has a big following, but his response to that was he believes it's a lot of people consolidating debt, right? So they're refinancing to consolidate a lot of the credit card debt they have. And is that something you guys would ever consider doing? I think, like you said, Ned, you were looking at a decision from a cash flow, and that's why what you said, you sold your home or you moved back.
Yeah, I went back to living in a property that cost us nothing, basically house hacking. Really, we just moved into an old family property out in the country that we all kind of use intermittently, and I'm going to figure out a house hack or something after this. But yeah, that sale got us back, if you include maintenance and utilities and all that other stuff, at basically about $5,100 in cash flow back per month just on that one sale. So that'll let me turn around, and even though I had to take out a small line of credit to sell the house, I'll be able to pay all that off and fix a lot of the stuff that happened because of the insurance debacle we had over the last couple of years. With that one change. And, a lot of people were sitting around looking at the decision my wife and I made, and they're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that y'all would step back. And I was like, no, this is a step forward. And just, I feel like a lot of people, for some reason, wouldn't take maybe their ego's too much in stuff to where it's like, oh, I could never sell my house to like fix that. They would rather just hold out until things get better. And it's like, yeah, but I mean, where I want to be in 10, 20 years is so much further past where I am that I don't mind making little changes and tweaks here and just accepting and being humble that, I did 100% screw up. I mean, if you look at it, I could easily say like, hey, yeah, I didn't expect insurance rates to triple. That was not in my underwriting. That wasn't there. Went from 25,000 to 92,000.
That's crazy.
And I still almost cash flowed. That's how conservative my underwriting was. And we still turn around and said, all right, well, this was our fault because we didn't put enough slack in our underwriting to where we bought the house because we moved out of a unit, and that unit's net income was going to mostly cover the house we were moving into to start a family. And then insurance immediately shifted. So I added that $5,000 and that 20. So basically I added 100,000 in expenses that I didn't have the year before because the market shifted right when I moved out of my house hack. So as far as like perfect timing,
Yeah.
like, excellent, you know? And I think it's important for people to not let their ego get wound up in stuff like, oh man, a lot of people, I can see in the way that a lot of conversations went that a lot of people would have said, you know what, I can sell the rental property and I could take the equity and then I can pay down the house and I can afford to live here still. Whereas selling the house, moving out, our long-term prospects, in my opinion, are so much better for making the more, I would say, more humble decision of saying, we messed up. Let's downgrade the lifestyle for now and then get back to this later.
Yeah, I think that goes to Joe V's comment. I think that's somewhat of the kind of struggle he faces right now is the wife is not as on board as he is, kind of heading down this path or journey. So, like you said, that you kind of touched on in it is having someone that's willing to make these sacrifices with you, or kind of have the same vision. Not saying Joe's wife is not willing to make sacrifices. Maybe she just doesn't have the same vision to go about it as he does. But I think that's super important.
I think a big part of that, you have to learn to sell. Like, what's the dream? Where are you going? That was the hardest part and it was hard for my wife to see it until COVID hit and everything is falling apart around us. And we were good because our rental properties smoothed out all the bumps that everyone else was feeling. We didn't feel. But at the same time, it was still hard for my wife, even after seeing that, to see where I was envisioning us going. And I think that whoever it is who's manning the ship and trying to steer and figure this journey out, whether it's you or whether it's the male or it doesn't matter. Part of leadership is sales. If the other person isn't getting where you're going, I think part of that is hopefully you don't have the wrong team, but a big part of that, I think, is maybe you're not communicating, or maybe where you're going isn't like, what does the other person in that team need at the end of the road to make the sacrifices now worth it? Like, what part of the dream isn't there that could maybe sell them? You know, look at it from maybe that perspective. So that part was really hard for me. Don't think that this was just kind of like, oh yeah, she was always on board and I'm the best communicator ever. And that's just, that's not none of this is just immediately easy and intuitive. Like we're all making it up as we go because everyone's situation is different. Your numbers are not my numbers.
Yeah. I follow up with that. Yeah. It took me about almost 4 years for us to even just buy our primary and then going into, a rental property. It was just that constant conversation of, she was like, well, I don't understand, what Joe V was talking about, the 401k. I don't understand the stocks or anything like that. So making real estate more linear and understanding of this is what the cash flow looks like. This is what the fixes need to look like. She could understand that. And so when we went through that process, that's what made it a lot easier because I agree with you, Ned. It was not an overnight thing.
You got to learn how to teach. I don't know how to teach.
I agree. Yeah.
It's like we don't know how to teach and we're figuring out real estate. So they're like, oh, well, you don't really know yet. And then you haven't done it. So since you haven't done it, how do you know? And it's like, well, if we try it, and they're like, oh, okay. So you don't know. Like,
Well, I think to kind of finish that up, like you're saying, we're kind of just figuring things out as you go too. But that's also, maybe like on Economic Ninja's point or what they're talking about, maybe people refinancing to consolidate debt. It might be a short time fix because if you're not really learning from your mistakes or learning from your spending habits or the mistakes that put you in this position. And just because you refinance and consolidate the debt, that's just, putting yourself in maybe a worse financial position. As far as what is the debt secured on, right? Unsecured debt
Right.
or secured debt, right? So I think if you're not really learning from your mistakes, it's not really going to help you, as Jovi kind of touches on, like seeing that far ahead, right? Looking forward. But Hyder did have a question here. Let's see what it was.
Well, real quick,
Oh yeah, go ahead.
consolidation can be a good thing, but it can also be stupid. There. If someone's consolidating so they can free up their credit cards to buy more, just whatever, like that's a bad move. But if you've reached a spot where you're like, you suddenly see the matrix, and now it's like, oh, okay, if I consolidate, then I have the flexibility to make these moves to fix and make everything long term start to move in the right direction. If it's part of your strategy, that could be awesome. And that's why I'm so hesitant to critique someone. Most of the time, it's probably for the wrong reason. Probably.
I
But
think
occasionally it can be super, super, super smart.
no, yeah. I think you watched that video because that's kind of the whole message too, right? Like they kind of all had their own viewpoints on it, as to maybe like it always comes down to right. You're trying to figure things out, and it's where you're at in your journey. And like you're saying, if you're not learning from your mistakes, and you're just gonna consolidate that to keep doing the same thing over and over again, then yeah, it's not a good move. But like you're saying, if you've seen the matrix or you broke free from the matrix, whichever way you want to look at it, and you see like, okay, if I consolidate this to acquire more assets or to improve my situation by, like you're saying, increase the cash flow or something, then that definitely makes a lot of sense, right? But let's see, where was Hyder's question again? Oh, here. Looking back at appreciation, is anyone still surprised by interest rates going up?
I think he's saying insurance rates.
Insurance rates going up. Okay.
Because like if your asset value doubles, then your insurance should probably, follow that.
Right.
The cost of replacing it's probably done the same thing.
Okay, yeah, because so further down he says, I'm not justifying insurance rates, but I see why they have adjusted. Yeah. Let's see. Hyder says, I'm not learning from my mistakes. I backed out of the live again for the third or fourth time in a row. Well, it shows interaction. At least you're coming back. So it shows that there's stuff you're tuning back in for. So that's good. All right. Well, this was a fun one. It's about an hour and 90 minutes. So, I think this was a good one. Ned, thanks for joining us a little bit late, but glad to have you back on, man.
Well, I mean, I do think we can talk about Hyder's comment on whether or not insurance should have gone up.
Oh yeah. Go ahead, man.
I think one thing people don't realize is like, I don't know. Let's think of like Tampa or these places in Florida where insurance rates have gone up. Those are also the places that saw the highest appreciation, right? And if you've got a regional insurance company who's like used to writing only Tampa and Florida, or like maybe Alabama, Mississippi, an area like tri-state region, something like that. Maybe they went from, hey, 3 years ago when we were writing this area, we said, hey, let's spread. We're going to do 30% in each state. And that way, if anything happens, Alabama, Mississippi, whatever states weren't hit by a hurricane will easily offset the fact that, you were smart. You spread your portfolio. That way you weren't isolated or consolidated anywhere. And then all the prices go up in Tampa. And I mean, what happened with real estate prices in Tampa? They like doubled or some crazy nonsense like that. It was like one of the hottest places in America. So if prices do that, and suddenly you go from, hey, we were evenly spread across all these areas, and then suddenly now it's 50% of our exposure is in one state, and then that gets hit by a storm. Yeah. So I think a lot of this is it takes a long time to reallocate and reposition a portfolio, whether it's insurance or real estate or whatever it is going on. And I think a lot of this is heartburn from a lot of that inflation, because inflation isn't like, it's not the same everywhere. It was different in different places. And so there's a lot of rebalancing and a lot of figuring out that's still happening in the financial markets and the investing markets and property. Like everyone is still trying to look back at what happened and where we are and figure out, hey, where are we and what does that mean? And I think a lot of this pricing that's happening and a lot of this confusion, excluding like places that have lawfare and like weird things going on with insurance companies and governors and things like that. I think a lot of the inflation stuff is just, we went from understanding markets to suddenly things are so radically different that we have to rethink them all. And so I think that's happening in insurance, in real estate investing, in tax allocation, of figuring out, oh, okay, well, yeah, everything changed in so many places that I think that it's going to take a long time to sort itself out. So it's hard to point a finger and say whose fault that is, or we should have learned faster.
That's a great point. Oh, Hyder says I could listen to Ned for hours. Well, you would have been able to if you showed up on time. You would have had him for 90 minutes today instead of like 40 minutes. But BuzzTune is giving us a great wrap up here. He says that's a great point. Do you not see the entire chessboard in the beginning? You only see sections of it as you walk the path. Until you go through it is when the board is more clear. Yeah,
very true.
Yeah, but I think, like we always talk about, the most important thing is you gotta be playing the game, or you gotta have your pieces on the chessboard, right? And if you're not on there, it's definitely putting you behind, right? It's easy to sit on the sidelines and make comments or make decisions when you're on the sidelines, but once you're on the chessboard, now it's real, and you're gonna make mistakes, but that's how things become clear and you get better at it.
Do you think that's part of the anxiety a lot of people starting out feel? Because I feel like maybe that's a bit of it, because you're like, let's stick with chess. You're hopping into a chess game where there isn't technically an ending, but someone else was playing before you, so you don't know the status of the board or what's going on or what the rules are. And so we're always hopping into a chess game that someone else started, and then we're going to get out at some point, and whoever's coming in to take over doesn't know why we are where we are now. They don't understand the context of things. Like, I'm sure there's reasons that a lot of this has happened where, if we had a 50-year time perspective, which is like things like Zuber's spreadsheet helps a lot, because you're like, oh, well, last time interest rates did this or inflation did that, then this happened with mortgage rates and blah, blah, blah. But like, if you sit down at I like sitting down at coffee shops with like older investors who are from like local meetup groups and stuff like that. And it's like, I like talking about what happened in the 70s, because I'm trying to figure out, okay, well, I see what the spreadsheet says, but I want to hear your stories of like what actually happened. Like, hey, when you were trying to figure out, because yeah, we see that rents were solid or whatever back then, but were you having to give free cable? Were you having to subsidize, like give out 1 or 2 months of free rent in order to keep your rent where it was? Like, that stuff isn't in the spreadsheet. There's a lot of stuff missing. And yeah, I don't know. It's such a complicated game. I think that's part of why we enjoy it,
Yeah, like even like talking about like chess, right? I mean, you may see the board one way, but someone else has played this 1,000 times, or they've seen the same setup, but they've seen the other person make a different move or whatnot, right? So it's kind of like, but you have to be playing the game to see all these different reactions or how people handle certain situations, and not everyone does it the same way. So like you're saying, rents may have gone up on this spreadsheet, but were there other factors, or what, like you're saying, are they giving incentives or other things, and how are different people reacting to the market at that certain time? So yeah, like I said, man, Ned, yeah, we got to get you back on and get you on time, so Hyder can get his full fix of you. I don't know, did you meet Hyder in Vegas? I forget.
Yeah, we met in Vegas.
Okay.
I think I was making fun of both of y'all about, like, man, I thought you'd be taller. Yeah, it was good. Hyder was like a mini celebrity. I thought it was funny that I can't remember. Was it Hyder who like technically didn't have VIP, but nobody cared? So he just like went everywhere. There was someone doing that.
That was Cody, because Cody's
That was
like
Cody?
Cody's
Okay.
like 6'2", 350, and no one was gonna say anything to him anyways. but I'm gonna just stand next to Mikey because I'm taller than Mikey, so I'm just gonna stand next to him the whole time. But hey, Lauren's here. Lauren, we are over 60 viewers overall without you here, so I don't know maybe people tuned in because they thought you were gonna be here. Okay, Lauren and Hyder are talking now.
Nice.
Cool.
I need to figure out a better way to mute this.
No, me too. So what I was trying to do was I was trying to just hit mute on the keyboard, but that actually mutes your guys talking to me. So
Oh,
the only way I can do it right now that I figured out is I'd have to keep going back to the.
I wonder if I could set up on my Stream Deck over here, because I don't use it much, but I can set up hotkeys. So I wonder if I can make a hotkey for muting on this thing.
Maybe, man. Just gotta play around. Like I said, just come here and play around. Like I'm still trying to figure out how to do all this sharing screens, and I want to get better at that. So even the mic. So if you guys haven't noticed, like I said, if you guys noticed that the audio was a lot poorer this time, let me know. But I'm trying this wireless mic, testing it out, so that way I don't have a mic in front of me and it's not in my way. But let me know if you think the audio was poor or if you noticed a big difference from previous lives. But yeah, thanks for tuning in, everyone. I guess we'll wrap it up, and we'll get everyone back on next week sometime.
great.
All right.
Thanks so much.
All right. Thanks, everyone.